Hello. Good morning. All right, I'm going to get us shared out here.
We'll have to be right at.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Give us a minute here. There we are. Okay. Okay, one more. Okay, all good.
Yay.
Alrighty, thank you for joining us today. Welcome to Braveheart Conversations. I am Jillian Aurora, and this is my lovely co-host, Marie Wallace.
Hi, guys.
And today we're really excited to talk about having hard conversations. And I was really excited to see the title of this morning's episode when I was reminded by our genius of lineup of just topics. And man, what a relevant topic for today in so many ways, not just in relationships, although I think that this is really important, absolutely, to be able to have hard conversations with your partner, but also hard conversations in general. I think that we have been so shitty at having conversations in general. And I've been appalled often in this last year in trying to have hard conversations, and just the lack of skills that I see all around me on social media and in general. So I really want to talk about just how do we do this? How do we have hard conversations that are productive? How do we have solution oriented conversations? And this gets into kind of my second passion, which is high conflict resolution, right? I'm a mediator, it's what I do. So this is kind of my second gig with coaching. Obviously, I'm very, very passionate about women's advocacy and empowerment, but close fiddle to that is mediation and conflict resolution. So this episode, I'll lean more into that skill set, and I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about how we do this. How do we have hard conversations with people we disagree with, and still be in our compassion, still not give away pieces of ourselves, but also not to be conforming and accommodating and losing ourselves for the sake of someone else. How do we have both of those things? So,
or shy away because of discomfort.
Right.
Because short-term discomfort for long-term results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk about how do we do this? How do we have hard conversations? How do we bring up tough topics when, there are things that desperately need to be talked about? Often we avoid them. That has been the coping skill for a very, very long time, just avoid it. But particularly in partnerships, that's very destructive and detrimental. And the best way to destroy a marriage is to not talk about tough things. And there can be really tender areas, very vulnerable things to talk about. And it is so vital that we go there anyway, even though it's risky, even though it's hard. So, how do we do it? What do we do? I have, as a mediator, I've seen couples that didn't have the hard conversations around finances, right?
The hardest one.
Yeah, all of a sudden.
The number one result for divorce.
You're talking about debt and you're talking about assets, and it's so interesting to me that sometimes couples are like, we have what? Where is that bank account? I've never heard of it. It's pretty wild. So, just the basics, just the very, very basic things that we really need to be communicating about are important. So one thing I like to do, and I know I've shared this before, I like to have regular check-ins in my healthy relationships. The people that I value most deeply, I will intentionally have check-ins. And for me in my partnership, I have basically an agenda. I have bullet points, topics that we address as needed, or it can be a scheduled once a month thing, or everything is flexible, but we have an intention for those conversations. What are our savings goals? When we have a little bit of extra cash, where does it go to? How are we doing in communication? Have we been setting boundaries with each other? Have we been honest with each other? If not, if there's something we've been suppressing, what is it? How do we need to address it? Is one person feeling let down in any areas? Is one person feeling like they're taking the bulk of the responsibility in any areas? There's a whole list of things that, it's easy to just kind of boom, boom, boom down the list. Okay, good. We're solid in that area. Oh, we've got a few things to hash out over here. And there is some risk in that, because you might not get the answers that you want. And you might also come to some conclusions like, oh man, like this relationship isn't working well, or it's not working like I thought it was, or this person is actually pretty unhappy, or I'm unhappy. And those can be really difficult truths to face, because those resolutions may not be what we want them to be. So anyway, that's on the positive side for me. That is, or I guess the proactive side for me, that's how I come at these tough conversations. Marie, how about you? When we're talking about a romantic partnership, how does that work for you?
Well, definitely check-ins, because we find that when we're arguing or fighting more, or we don't really fight in the way some people think, but when we find we're more disgruntled or gripey, it's because we haven't made intentional time to check in, to communicate our needs and wants. And so it just becomes like that little rub, and you can feel it rubbing, and some of the friction. And we're going, oh yeah, we haven't been checking in regularly like we were. And it's super important in all the things that you mentioned, all the topics. It's not just finances. It is, are we both getting our needs met? Are we feeling that one of us is taking on a brunt of work that another person might not? I mean, there's just a whole list of things. And it is nice to be able to go through each of those, so that we do have a chance to say, all right, how are you feeling in this area? And at first, it's super challenging. Yep. And you don't want to bring it up, and there's always something in your relationship where you're going, yeah, that one's a really tough subject to tackle. And sometimes I might even pre-frame it to say, I know this is a really tough subject for both of us. How about, we schedule some time and part out some time, specifically when we're both not at our height of busyness or stress, so that we can talk about those hard things. But that's usually what we do. And having those regular check-ins just makes it part of your routine. Yep. And so that sometimes there's hardly anything to talk about, and then but it makes way and room and a comfort level, so that when we do have to talk about hard things, it's a lot easier.
Well, one thing that I've noticed is when I do make those check-ins a priority and they're regular, it becomes much easier to have the organic conversations.
Exactly.
And it really builds trust, because if I can say, actually, I'm not very happy, Marie, like, I feel let down and I'm pulling more weight and blah, blah, blah. If I can say that safely, and Marie doesn't respond with defensiveness and dismissal and some of the things that are pretty classic in some relationships. So if I say, well, gee, Marie, I'm doing all the dishes, and I'm doing all the laundry, and
you're on the computer.
Some help. Yeah, you're playing video games,
which I do all the time.
And your response is, it's not that big of a deal. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Blah 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 blah. Basically, you've just told me that conflict with you isn't safe. And we're far less likely to have those difficult conversations in the future because they're not productive.
And your feelings don't matter.
Right. And so this has become for me an absolute non-negotiable in close relationships, that we can have this dialogue where no one is dismissed.
Yeah.
So if Marie comes to me and says, "Man, my feelings were really hurt when you said this, blah blah blah," I get to respond with curiosity. Even if I may not, maybe it was totally over my head. Maybe I didn't realize it happened. I had no intention of harming her. There's no maliciousness.
Right.
But instead of responding with defensiveness and I didn't and blah, 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 but responding with curiosity, like, oh, well, tell me more about that. How I want to know more so that I can make sure that doesn't happen in the future. It's more of questions, and digging deeper is really, really important, and vice versa.
Right.
And this builds trust. This tells Marie she's safe to tell me when her feelings have been hurt.
Yes.
Or that I'm going to be safe when I say, I really am feeling like there's some unequal responsibility here. So this is how we teach each other that we are safe people. And we have far too many relationships right now that are truly unsafe.
Right.
They're not safe emotionally, and so we suppress and we don't share the things that are really important and the things that are really bothering us because our partners have shown us that they're not safe to share with. Do you have anything to add to that, please?
Just being able to communicate how those feelings are also impacted, the depth of those feelings, because sometimes our partner may not understand the intensity of the emotion or the feeling. And I think that's an important thing too, is no, I really want you to hear how this is impacting me.
Yeah.
Because with my partner, it may not be a big deal, like doing all the dishes or whatever. Yeah, you just create your own thing because I'm in charge of these things. And just really impacting or telling him how that impacts me at a deeper level. I'm just making this up as far as that part, but sometimes that impact of feelings needs to be communicated too, because my partner may not understand the issue how it pertains to me specifically. So that's a hard thing to do sometimes. And so getting to know what it is I want specifically, so that when I go to approach that conversation, it is also productive.
Yeah, one thing that was very difficult for me in the past was doing that, because I'm a pretty high level emotion communicator. And being in a partnership where that was not the case with my partner, wasn't a high value.
Right.
So when I would have that type of a conversation, I'm doing all of the housework and this is a lot, and I'm working full time and I'm doing, all this stuff, and you're taking 3-hour naps and it feels a little unequal. The response would be, well, we all know that housework isn't that hard.
Yep.
Or I know that it's not politically correct to say anymore, but me and my buddies, we all laugh that you women think that it's worth actual money to do these tasks. And I remember feeling so dismissed, because it was a lot. Like, I was very, very overstretched, right? And
and your time was undervalued.
Very much so. So I was working very full time, and I was doing the grocery shopping and the laundry and the dishes and the deep cleaning and everything house oriented. And there was a lot of dismissal there. And I remember advocating for myself, like, okay, I'm going to look up and actually get quotes for how much this would cost. And sure enough, it was like $400 a month to do not even everything that I was doing. But, my biggest issue was not knowing when to let go. When we see people who are not able or willing to communicate at the level that we're wanting to communicate, they're not willing to resolve conflict, you need to know when to walk away from the table. There are mediations that I'm a part of that don't work. Yeah. If both people don't come to the table willing to make concessions and collaborate and work together on a mutual goal, good of all, yeah, then it won't work. And there are situations where I will say, you'd be a better fit for court because you're not willing to come to the table and actually have a good faith attempt to come to an agreement. And there are thousands of marriages that are in that boat, where you have two people where one is wanting, sitting at the table begging to have a real conversation, and the other one is not willing. They don't have the motivation to do it. And so
or the will or the skill, right?
Yeah. And so when you realize that you're with someone who's not able to have a constructive conversation, it's very important to know when it's time to walk away from the table. You have anything to add to that piece?
Nope, that was good.
Okay. Yeah, so know when you're having a constructive conversation and when you're not. Let's talk about when you're having a disagreement. And I'm going to talk more in generic terms, not necessarily in a romantic relationship, although it would apply. But I want to talk about some of the conversations that I've seen play out, mainly online, because there's only a few times where you really get to be a fly on the wall, right? And social media really allows us to be a fly on the wall and see people behaving really badly.
Often.
Yeah, just right out there for everybody to see. No shame anymore, which it's great. We can't resolve it unless we can see it and talk about it. But yeah, let's talk about when we're having things that we very much disagree on. How do we have those conversations? Okay, so here's how I see people communicating on social media. Oh gosh, what hot topics should we address? Masks, vaccines.
Any of those, yeah.
Oh man, Afghanistan, there's so many things.
Yeah, let's just go with the masks since that's most prevalent around the world.
Okay, so what side do you want?
We're going to do this.
We're going to do this. Because we can do this from either side.
You choose, and I'll just do the other one.
I'll be pro-mask. Okay. You're anti-mask.
Okay, I'll go for it. I didn't know about this part, but it'll be a fun experience.
I didn't either, but we're gonna roll with it.
It'll be a fun experience. Yes.
Okay, cool. So, what did I say? I'm pro-mask.
You're pro, and I'm anti. Okay.
So, you're not wearing a mask, Marie. Like, why are you not wearing a mask? Like, don't you realize? Do you not care about your elderly neighbors and community members? Like, I just don't understand how you could be so selfish.
I do care. I just feel that it's my right not to have a mask, and if they feel more comfortable wearing a mask, they can wear a mask and they can protect themselves. And I've been vaccinated, and I feel that I'm doing what I can and what's my right to do.
Well, I just think that if you can have your choice, but when you're hurting other people, like, that's not a right choice. And you shouldn't have the choice to hurt other people.
They had the option to be in this situation or not be in this situation. And so I'm choosing to be in this situation without a mask.
You're not being mean enough, but...
I know.
You suck at being mean, Marie.
I suck at being mean. Well, that's a good thing to suck at. Well, you guys are just trying to force yourself on us without choices. You're trying to put your rule over on us. We just have the right to not have a mask.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's pretty much the narrative. Okay, so have we gotten anywhere?
Nope.
Have we
just
changed
arguing
each other's minds at
Nope.
all? No. So what would be an alternative? How could that be a productive conversation?
First, we have to come up with a little bit of ground rules. I'd really like to have this conversation with you, and just know that I'm here to see both sides. I would really like to hear your side and how you feel in this situation, and I'd like to be able to say, no name calling, no, no hitting below the belt, meaning I'm not going to attack you, or I'm really going to sit here and listen to what you have to say. My job is just to listen to what you have to say and then get curious and ask you questions. Would that be okay? Is there anything that you would like to start this conversation with? Any ground rule you would like?
First of all, I would say most of the time we don't have the opportunity to do
ask for
that.
Ground rules. That's true.
But
that's true in a normal situation.
It doesn't mean that we can't operate from that stance.
Sure.
So
it could be an unwritten rule.
Knowing, like, you holding those standards for yourself, how would you come at me? I'm pro-mask and kind of militant pro-mask. Okay, that's the position
I would just really like to understand and hear what you have to say about pro-mask and so that I can make a choice for myself.
Yeah. Curiosity and questions are everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, why
do you want to wear a mask?
So dig into what. So why do you want to wear a mask?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I have a lung disorder, and actually, I would be really, really susceptible to COVID. Okay, that might be one.
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know that on face value.
Sure.
Right. Or I could say something like, well, actually, I live with my, child who has a very vulnerable lung disease. And now you see why I would have a bias.
Sure.
We all have bias. We are absolutely, we have a huge blind spot if we say we don't have bias.
True.
Everyone has implicit bias. There's bias that we're unaware of. There's bias that we are aware of. The more aware we are of our own bias, the better. So, but yeah, you could see how if I have a child who has, immune problems or a lung issue, I'm gonna feel biased generally, and you're gonna understand that bias a lot more, right? And you might even give me a little leeway to understand that I'm probably not going to budge.
Sure.
For understandable reasons.
Exactly.
Now let's do this vice versa. Okay.
Okay.
Marie, what makes you feel so strongly about not wearing masks?
Well, I really don't believe in government jumping in on my rights to have a vaccine or wear a mask or those kinds of things, because I've seen where they take that power to the extreme. And then pretty soon they're going to dictate how I live my life in general.
What makes you have that fear?
Past experiences where I've seen the government really overstep their bounds as far as my own personal rights.
And I'm sure, we could dig even deeper into that, where maybe she does have some serious trauma. And maybe even outside of the government, I'm willing to...
At my house and my family.
Yeah, there we go. Bingo. I'm willing to say, make a stretch. And this is where I think some emotional intelligence and empathy is required, where you can read between the lines in a generous assumptions kind of way.
Sure.
Where I can say, I bet Marie has had some wounds where her personal power has been taken away.
Yeah. And
this is really meaningful. This is a hot button for her because she has trauma around her authority being taken away from herself. And so you can see both sides where they're coming. You have to see the iceberg.
Right.
Underneath the ocean, because there's always more there. Now, that's aside from the fact that, let's say Marie her whole family is very invested in no masks.
Right.
Okay, so if Marie were to consider any other position outside of her own, what would be the consequence?
I'd be isolated and not accepted in my family or ridiculed for making a different choice. I mean, which causes a whole new layer of trauma, right? So I could be susceptible to a whole new being traumatized in a whole different way.
Yeah. And another thing that I might give her the benefit of the doubt is that doing that and actually violating some of those relationships could actually impact her in a way that her finances are jeopardized or that her physical safety is jeopardized. And these actually aren't big stretches. So,
No, I've seen it actually. Yeah.
yeah. So, um, this is where we really get to be more aware of what's going on behind the scenes more than just what she's saying, which
Right.
is, damn it, no masks. I want choice. There's so much more going on.
Which is where your empathy and emotional IQ comes in, is being emotionally aware what's going on with another person. It takes a lot to be able to read between the lines,
Yeah.
and to have the heart to say, I really want to understand this person more, and the position more, because in general it's nice to understand everyone's perspective in this. It just feels that like you can resolve some of that deeper crazy conflict that's going on.
Something that I feel like everyone could practice in their communication and we would improve so much is everyone is pretty familiar with straw man, right?
Yes.
You're just straw manning me. I want to talk about a positive thing to do, which is called steel man. If
Okay.
you steel man someone in a debate, that means I am going to describe to the best of my ability what Marie's perception of our disagreement is. So I would explain her perspective to the best of my ability until she can agree that that's her perspective. So I would say something like, so let me understand this more. Your perspective is that you believe that we should not wear masks because it takes away our individual freedoms, and then if you've
Right,
already
if I've
shared with
said-
me, then maybe I would say, and you've had some trauma around experiences where you've felt muzzled, you've felt limited in your ability to speak, and you've been governed against your will. So I would explain what I think her issue is with me, and my position, how our positions differ. And I think this is a fantastic way to practice empathy.
I think that's a
Really
wonderful
easy
way.
to get it wrong, right?
Yeah.
Because I could easily be like, Marie just
Attacking.
thinks that she can do whatever the hell she wants and put anybody in jeopardy. I could do that, and that's a really bad steel man. And so you didn't get it right until the other person says, yes, that's what I believe. You did
Exactly.
not get it right until they can agree with you. So that's really important. An important skill is to really be listening to the point that you actually are hearing the other person and you can repeat what they believe in a way that they say, yes, that's right. That's what I believe.
In the coaching world, they call that active listening, right? Where you can really repeat back to them this is what I felt like I heard you say, and is that correct?
And it's
either both are really, you're actively listening, not prepared to defend yourself and your rights, but you're actively seeking understanding and actually really listening.
Steel manning is a little bit more specific than active
Right.
listening because you're actually defining what their position is,
Right.
whereas active listening may or may not be.
Okay.
Active listening is just repeating back
What
in
they've
your own
said.
words what
Right.
they've said. Yeah. Steel manning is a little bit more of a
On the position
yeah.
part.
What is
Cool.
Yeah. How is our position different, and how are you
Isn't
seeing that?
mediation awesome?
Yeah, it is. It really is. Let's talk about a few other small techniques. So, really some easy things, easy-ish. They're simple, maybe not easy to practice, but instead of saying
Say
you just blah blah blah, I.
I feel, yeah.
I statements are really important. Um, I've decided. I choose to. Um, Here's what I will be doing. When you are more focused on what I choose to do instead of what you should do, that is almost
Less argumentative.
yes, it's almost always going to elicit an argument if I say, well, you should be wearing a mask. You should be whatever. I can much better explain my position. We can come to an understanding that might actually come to a resolution if I come from a perspective where I'm clear about what I desire, what my goal is. I'm clear about me. That's the inner work, right? We have to do our own work to clarify what we want. And then being able to communicate that not in a way that's threatening, not in a way that is, you have to do this.
Right.
But this is what I'm choosing to do, and here's why. Let me hear more about why you choose to do what you do. This is where we actually have the opportunity to come to a mutual understanding and to maybe change each other's minds.
Right.
This is how we have actual heart change, right? Not forcing each other, not being militant about it, which is what I see a lot of the time,
especially on social media, right?
Yeah. So really taking out that you perspective. But here's me. Here's what I'm doing. That's a really important key. Another thing that I see a lot is assumptions. And I'll bring up an example, another social media example. So this was several weeks ago. I have an adopted pit bull, right? And this dog was not super happy about my cats when he was introduced to the family. Marie is familiar with my little guru. And so for a while we used a muzzle while he was getting used to the cats, and it was something that it was very instrumental tool, very helpful, and now he's free and happy with the cats, and they get along well. Well, I put a picture on social media with his muzzle on, and I didn't think anything of it, but oh my Lord, like there were so many people who came out against any use of the muzzle, and they made a lot of assumptions.
And never asked a question.
Yeah, very, very few questions. But they assumed why he was wearing a muzzle. They assumed how long he was wearing a muzzle. They assumed he was in fear. They assumed that he was hunting my cats. Like there were so many things
about you as a person.
Yeah. There were threats to call the Humane Society. It just went on and on and on and on. So the interesting thing is I left it all up because I thought, this was good practice to communicate. This was good conflict, high conflict, very, very small issue compared to so many other things, but very, very good container to practice conflict and asking questions and understanding. And but it was a little disheartening to see where we are at as far as navigating conflict, because that could have gone so differently. So I want to talk about assumptions for a minute instead of saying, based on this little snapshot or this picture, which is really all we get on social media, right? Whether it's my dog or somebody wearing a mask or anything out there, we're seeing a really, really tiny snapshot of that person and their life. So what I see happen too often is that we make assumptions, and we assume that because, I could do this. Okay, if you're wearing a mask, I could say you're a Democrat.
Yes. I hear that all the time, right?
I could say you voted for Biden. I could say, I might even base, you might live in a city.
I believe in social programs. There's all kinds of things
You
that are assumed.
believe in vaccines. You're behind the FDA. You like the medical. Do you see how many assumptions I can make just on that one thing? And this is what I see people do a lot of the time, is that based on one thing, we do it. If we see somebody flying a flag, oh, they are
Right.
fill in the blank. Um, they have one little label, or they have, even a female with a short haircut. I
Right.
could make some assumptions. And it's not that it's wrong, because again, we have bias. Everyone has bias. However, if I know that I have those biases, if I know I have them, I can stop myself and ask questions. Instead of assuming Marie's wearing a mask, therefore blah, 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 I can ask. Because I get to challenge my bias. I get to challenge my assumptions and see if they're correct, because I may or may not be correct. And where facts are scarce, the imagination runs wild.
Right.
So when we're in conflict, it's really, really important to suspend those assumptions, suspend our bias, and ask if we're correct. Do some digging, be curious. If I could stress anything in this conversation today, it is to be curious. Ask far more questions than you do statements, and that will get you so far in your conflicts. So I could go on and on and on with this topic. I know that we've already gone a little bit over, so I know that we need to wrap it up. But really important conversation today. Get out there and learn about conflict. There's a lot of books about conflict. There's a lot of information out there. Look up bias.
Especially implicit bias.
Implicit bias. Yeah, please understand.
Crucial Conversations is a good book.
Nonviolent communication is
That one's a
another
really great
one
one.
that's great. What's the word I'm looking for? Oh, in-group bias is something that is also really, really relevant to conversations today. So, look up in-group bias. The Big Sort is another book that was really, really helpful for me to understand how we are sorting into categories, and that isn't very helpful. Did you want to say something?
No.
Okay. All right. So we just scratched the surface. There's so many other skills, but we're going to go ahead and wrap up there. And if you have any further questions about having difficult conversations or conflict resolution in general, please feel free to reach out to either of us. Individually, you can reach out to me at defytheaverage@gmail.com or Marie.
Marie at mariesgold.com. Yeah, we welcome them.
Yeah, we would love any of your feedback or further questions. We can dig into this topic deeper.
All right.
Yeah. You can find us in our Facebook group, Braveheart Conversations. You can see this episode and any of our past episodes and join conversations there. You can also find us on any of the various podcasting platforms. Please hit us up, give us a like, give us a review. If you've enjoyed this video today, send us some love, share it out to your friends. And with that, we will see you next Thursday morning. We are here live every Thursday, and I hope you all enjoy the beginning of this fall season and go spend some time out in nature this week. We love you all. Have a great one. Bye-bye.